Happy Monday, May 3rd. This is Miss Tara at the Hummingbird Conservatory. I am your virtual voice teacher, and here we are for another virtual voice lesson. Let me just double check. My husband will call me if that. Okay, good. Everything's okay. Okay, so how are you doing? How's everything going? I hope that you enjoyed the stream last week and were able to do some of the exercises. Remember, you can always come back to Twitch at any point. I keep them up for up to 2 weeks, and you can also check it out. Check out older episodes and all the exercises on the YouTube channel, which is Miss Tara Hummingbird Conservatory. So please feel free to check it out anywhere you'd like, and shoot me a message here on Twitch or hit me up on Instagram. It's the Hummingbird Conservatory, or Sing With Me 2020. You can find me anywhere, and I'd love to chat with you some more about your singing. To that end, I actually have a friend who asked me to talk a little bit about vibrato and to put together a lesson on vibrato. And I just, it's so funny because within 24 hours, I was also talking on a podcast with someone about singing, and she told me about a singing teacher she had who told her not to use vibrato. Vibrato is one of these things that is just so contentious. It's a real point of contention for a lot of teachers. I know my voice teacher currently kind of prefers less vibrato, but I've also been around coaches and singing teachers who wanted more. I've been asked if I could sound more like a little boy when I sing in auditions, and I've been asked why I'm not sounding more operatic when I sing in auditions. So it's so funny because I think that people put a lot of weight and energy on vibrato creating a mature sound in a singing voice, and I want you to know that I don't necessarily think that that's true. I also don't necessarily think it's untrue. What I believe is true about vibrato is that it is naturally occurring as the result of excellent breath support and good placement of the voice. And then when those two things meet, what happens is this surplus of air combined with great resonance starts to create a naturally occurring vibration in the voice. And every voice is different and unique to its own, but you can't self-create it, and you can't just put it in your voice if you don't have it. You do have to develop breath support and strong intonation and strong tonality, meaning that your voice is on tone, floating on breath frequently. So lucky for you guys, if any of you were actually interested in that all of these exercises that I'm teaching here on Sing With Me are designed exactly for those things. And especially this one that we're going to do today, this is like the starter package of this today. We'll get as far into it as we can today, and then I'll probably continue with it next week because I love this sort of series of exercises that I developed. I call them the post-vacation exercises. I gave them out in my studio for the entire month of January over 4 weeks, and all of my singers were singing better by the end of January, and I was singing better because I was modeling these so completely all the time. And you can do any different combination once we get them all down. You can mix and match and do any different combination that works well for you in your own practice. So we'll start with that today, and it's based on the perfect fifth jump, which is a jump from do to sol or back down from sol to do. So we'll go through that patterning for you to help you out. But today we're going to begin our voice lesson the way we begin all voice lessons, with some attention on breath, okay? I'm going to begin with my stamina exercise where I'm going to breathe in really slowly. I'm going to hold my breath, and today I'm going to count. So I'm going to start with a count of 12 beats, which I'll count out on my hands for you, and then I'll release the air on a really thin stream for as long as I can. If you can do this with me, that's so great. If you're keeping pace with me, that's awesome. If you can't, that's totally fine too. Do it at your own way and pace, at your own rate. If you want to join me and not count like we did last week in our lesson, that's totally fine too. I invite you to do it any way that works for you, that you feel comfortable. Just a reminder that if you're seated, you want to have your feet flat on the floor, and I still have my feet shoulder width apart. I'm seated right now. I have my back up off the back of the chair. Okay, if you're standing with us, you want to be standing with your feet about shoulder width apart, a slight bend in your knees, and a sense of your butt being tucked underneath you. And always, 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 I'm going to talk a little bit about this today too. We want to keep a nice lift in our torso. So nothing too stressful, nothing too tense, nothing over lifted in my shoulders. Just a nice lift, a nice sense of posture, so that this entire vertical stretch here from the stomach muscles up through the lungs, up through the neck, up and out is a nice column for which we can sing on, okay? Here we go. I'm beginning with a stamina exercise. I'm gonna breathe in slowly, as slow as I can through my mouth, pulling the air across the back of my throat. I'm gonna count to 12 beats on my fingers at a pace that I feel is comfortable for me. And then I'm gonna send the air out on a really thin stream that comes between my lips for as long as I can, feeling my stomach muscles pulling in back towards my spine, okay? Here we go. And I totally overdid that. I did it till 16 beats. When I got to my hand the third time, I was like, uh-oh, I'm just going to keep going and I'll go to 16. I like to think I'm in 4/4 when I'm counting. That's why it went to 16 beats. Okay, let's do that again. And since I did 16, let's go to 20. Okay, so I'm going to breathe in really slow. You can probably, I don't know if you can hear this, but I'm pulling the air across the back of my throat. Now, I don't do this when I sing. Later, when you hear me sing, do, sol, do, you're not going to hear me dragging my breath across the back of my throat. But this is just a practice that I use to relax the throat nice and easy, to make a nice long, to give it a nice relaxed sense back there and a sense of a cavernous feeling. And it also slows the process of inhalation down. So it just slows everything down so that I can slow this process of breathing down for myself and really get into my body to feel my entire instrument. Okay, here we go again. Maybe I shouldn't be counting because clearly it's so weird. So I went to 21 beats that time. If you were joining me, I maybe don't know how to count so well. But that felt really good. And when I got to the end, you could see me. I brought my arms down because I was feeling my stomach muscles pull in. Even when I think I'm done, I pull them in a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. There's always more air in there. And trust me, if you're a singer, you're going to get to a point where a song shows up where you need those last little bits of air. You cannot breathe for another measure or another 3 beats, or you have to diminuendo or something, and you need that little last tail of air there. So, okay, I'm gonna do this one more time, and then this time I'm not gonna count since I'm horrible at it, but that was always the plan anyway. So I'm gonna hold my breath for as long as I feel like I can, and I encourage you to do the same. And then you exhale when you feel ready to exhale. So you don't have to do this in time with me, or you could beat me on it. Who knows? Okay, here we go. Ooh, that felt really good. That time I could feel my lungs and my rib cage get engaged. I also don't know if you noticed this, but I spit spectacularly on that exhale. And if you're embarrassed for me, don't be. Singing is super physical and it's really gross. It's not glamorous at all. We make it look really glamorous, but actually it's very physical and it's kind of grim. So if you spit while you're watching this, good for you. I've actually had people spit and had in their lessons and have it land on me. So that's why we're not having lessons in person right now. Thank you, COVID-19. Anyway, so now what we're going to do is we're going to get right into the interval jumps that I was talking about earlier. So this interval is called a perfect fifth, okay? So that means we're jumping from do, which is your starting pitch on the scale, to sol. Okay, the fifth note of the major scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that jump from do to sol is called a perfect fifth, okay? Do, sol, do. And what I'd like to do with you now is what I want us to do is just do the jump a couple times. We are in our fourth octave here on the piano. So if you're joining me and you have a bass or tenor voice, please feel free to join me in an octave that's comfortable for you. And what we're going to do is we're going to go do, sol, sol, do, do, sol, sol, do, do, sol, sol, do. Now, if you feel like this jump is hard, it is actually. That's the first thing. Jumping 5 notes from one note up 5 is kind of hard. But first of all, there's 2 things that can help you out here. First of all, the d of do and the s on sol are, d is more voice, sort of semi-voice, semi-aspirate, but the s on sol is a very aspirate consonant, and we can use that to pull the stomach muscles in and get us up there. The other thing that I'm using to help me in both of these situations on both notes is the O, okay? So you can use that O vowel to really explore your voice and let your voice go wherever it wants to go. Do, sol, sol, do, 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 do, sol, sol, do. Okay, so that's sort of our pattern. That's the 2 notes that we're going to be focusing on today in these patterns. So now, just to enjoy a sense of that note on a staccato, I want to sing that same thing. Oh, no, we're going to change it up a little bit, but we're going to sing the same notes on a he. So you're going to go he, 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 okay? And when I do that staccato, it's short and disconnected. That's what staccato means, short, disconnected breath, okay? I'm singing on my exhalation, so the pulling in is brisk, okay? And then I release it so that I have that space in between. And what I'm doing at that space in between is I'm taking a little tiny breath, just the littlest, tiniest of breath, for the next one, okay? So I don't need a ton of air for this exercise. He, 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 he. Now, if this feels a little bit scary to you, what I really want to encourage you to do as you get higher is to trust yourself. Trust your air, trust your breath, trust your vowel, trust your voice, okay? So as long as you're pulling that stomach muscles, the stomach muscles in and keeping a nice E in position here, you don't have to reset your mouth or do anything like that when you're singing staccato. In fact, if you notice, watch how I do it. He, he. So I'm always keeping my mouth in position while I'm singing that phrase, and that's going to become more important. But we're not changing our vowel at all. It's all one vowel right now, so you don't have to. It's sort of like you set the template up, and then you let the breath support, the pulling in and the exhalation help yourself sing on that note. He, 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 he. He, 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 he. What I like about staccato too, if you're newer to singing, is apart from the fact that it's short and it really helps you get on your breath support muscles, because it's short and because it helps you get on your breath support muscles, the sound that you're making, even though it's short, is very, very well produced. And we're going to try to recreate that eventually in legato. And actually, this series of exercises is sort of going to design to help you with some of that actually later on. But the idea is that I'm just creating the smallest amount of sound I can on breath that's well produced, that's in tune, that's matching the piano, that's got lots of tone on it. And that's why I really like staccato. It just helps pull the voice back, pull any habits that I may have in my instrument back, and it gets sort of everything back to one, you know? And then I can do other things with it eventually that help me build on those healthy habits. Let's do a couple more of this jump right now. He, 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 he. And if you're joining me at home, it's on you to be as short and disconnected as you can. So if you're noticing that you don't feel short or disconnected, or you're noticing that maybe you're holding the last note, that tends to happen every now and then, be really honest with yourself about your form. Am I doing this the way that Miss Tara is doing it? If it feels like it's still connected, you can actually slow down. Do one scale at your own tempo, put me on pause, have me play it, and then do it at your own tempo to really get a sense of that short disconnectedness of staccato. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this pattern, we're going to change it a little bit, but we're going to still be using these same two notes, okay? We're going to do a repeat 3 times on do, and then jump to the sol 1 time, and then back down to do. And every single time we hit that note, right now, it's going to be staccato. So you're going to go like this. You're going to go he, okay? And I'm going to try to do this really slowly so you can follow the pattern. He, 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 he. And when I do my staccato that slow, that means I have time to breathe in between. Sometimes staccato is just pulling in, stop, pulling in, stop, pulling in, stop. But this time right now, I have time to pull in and release. So that's what I'm doing. He, 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 he. 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 Notice my mouth is staying in position and I'm not doing anything with my jaw to create that staccato too. So I'm not crunching it, I'm not biting on it, not he. It's not like that at all. It's just keeping it nice and lifted. I have a slight smile on my face, which gives me a little tiny bit of lift on my cheekbones, which keeps a lift in the soft palate, helps to keep the sound moving forward. He, 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 he. 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 I'm going to try that again because I didn't like the way I sounded on that. One more time. He, 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 he. That was a kind of okay. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to descend, and now we're going to double our jumps, okay? So you're going to do, basically it's do, 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 sol, do, sol, do. Okay, but it's going to be on the he. So you're going to do he, 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 he. He, 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 he. And I'm getting just the littlest, tiniest whisper bear on all of those that down time. That not that there's very much between those notes. He, 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 he. 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 Now, if you're having trouble with the idea of sort of keeping a smile on your face, because a lot of people do, they feel like it's a little too spread or too pulled this way. And indeed, I don't like the idea of you pulling this way in your singing. We want to have a lift here, but a nice relaxed jaw here. when we extend eventually for high notes. But for right now, one of the things you might think about doing, this helped one of my students a lot this week, was this idea of sort of biting in, not with the lower jaw, so not chewing, okay, not like that, but just biting in and sort of getting some teeth into the sound. That helped this student keep a nice lift in their soft palate, so they were able to resonate really well on tone, okay? So now what we're going to do is this. We're going to do the staccato again, double staccato, but on the top note, what I'd like you to do is change it from an E to an O. So you're going to go like this. He, ho, he, ho, he. Do I want to keep it on an O? Let's do ooh. Let's do ooh. So we're going from E, which is a very narrow but kind of shallow vowel, to ooh, which is narrow but has a little depth to it. So you're going to go he, hoo, he, and I love this. I can already feel my sound kind of in this place inside my head, right behind where my nose is. There's like this little cavity where my voice likes to hang out, and this exercise has already gotten me right in there. Okay, really warmed my voice up, which I love. He, hoo, he, hoo, he. 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 I'm going to go a little bit higher this time, so if you're joining me, do it in whichever octave you feel comfortable in. And just again, if you're struggling a little bit, if you feel like there's stretching going on here, where you're reaching for something with your tongue or your mouth that's not quite there, I really just want to encourage you to trust your breath. Just trust your breath. And by the way, you can do any version of this you'd like. So if you just want to do singles, that's totally fine too. He, hoo, he, hoo, he. 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 Two more. He, hoo, he, hoo, he. He, hoo, he, hoo, he. So now what I'm going to do with the last few minutes of our lesson today is I'm going to introduce the slur, which is the sort of second part of this exercise. So a slur is a note that connects from one note to another. Typically we think about slurs going from a low note to a higher note. For example, like do to sol. Okay, and when I go from a high note to a low note, that can be called a slur, but I, as a singing teacher, I like to call that a sigh. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a slur from the do to the sol, okay? And I'm going to slur up to the note, okay? But then I'm going to release that note up there and come back down staccato on the do. So it's going to sound like this. He, okay? Now, the way that I did that was I created the space, right? I got a nice breath. And then to connect note 1 to note 2, do to sol, I pulled my stomach muscles in continuously until I got up to the top note. And then I released it like it was staccato. So I went he, almost as if the stomach muscles were pulled in a little more aggressively, pulled in more consistently, sort of like if you were pulling on, I like to think of it sort of like pulling on the strings of a corset a little bit, because there's this idea of pulling back and in with the stomach muscles there. The other way I've told some of my students to kind of get it more action oriented was that your stomach muscles get kind of kicked in. But the thing about that is that it's this idea that it's coming from this way. And actually, I really feel like it's the stomach muscles are engineering it, which they are, and they're pulling back towards the spine. So that's why I prefer to think of it more like a corseted kind of move. So I'm doing he, he, okay? And if you noticed, my voice just stayed in that same position the whole time, okay? So I connected the bottom note to the top. He, okay? And that's what you want to do too. You want to try to connect bottom to top on air though. So if you see yourself going he like that, or moving something, or something getting tense, then it's not on your breath. Sometimes I tell my students who struggle with this bit to close their eyes. I know it's really strange, but if you something about closing the eyes helps you get more in touch with the breath support muscles. He, 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 he. And then I'm going back down to that low do, right? So I go do to sol as a slur, then release on top and hit the low do staccato again. So short and disconnected back on the bottom. He, 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 he. So it's like my breath is moving in two gestures, right? There's the gesture of connecting the low do to the sol, which is sort of a longer gesture, a longer pulling in, and then a releasing on top, and then another staccato tap just on the bottom, okay? And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do this again, but what I'd like you to do is transition from an E to an oo on the top note. So you go he, just like that. He, he. And if you notice while you're doing this, you might feel this sort of naturally occurring Y sound from the E to the oo, ew, or ew. Actually, it's sort of more W, sorry. E to oo is a W sound. So use that W to connect yourself. Ew, E, ew, E, ew, he, ew, he. He. Now, a couple of times I did it without H's because I just got into the really nice sensation of that buzzing sound. And if you're doing this right and you're noticing a lot of vibrating in your face, or that suddenly your speaking voice is just very accessible to you, that's great. That's a really good, that means that the exercise is really working on your voice. You should feel just suddenly a lot of facility in your speaking voice because it's just bringing everything into this nice forward chamber in your face, okay? But a couple of times I forgot to put my H on, and I highly recommend for new singers that you put that wisp of air at the beginning of your slur. He, because it really is sort of there. It's a little bit like staccato and breath training wheels, but they're really effective training wheels. He, 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 So, if you're going to be joining me for the lesson next week, I highly recommend reviewing these two this week because we're going to combine them next week and start creating more advanced exercises that move more swiftly to basically get the same thing going, but they just really work out the stomach muscles a lot, and I super, super love them. So just as a reminder, this was a do to sol jump. You can do that as many times as you want. Then we did that just staccato, he, he. Then what we did was we did a repetitive motion with staccato on the bottom note, jumping one time to the sole, then back down. He. And then once you felt better about that, we doubled it. He. And we just doubled the jump, by the way. I didn't double the do. Because the action, for me, the action is in the jumping. So that's the purpose of this. And then finally, we worked a little bit on our formation of our slur, moving from low to high. He. And we really connect note 1 to note 2 on the jump, but then we release that top note like it's staccato and come back down for one final staccato on do. He. Thank you so much for joining me on Sing With Me. I am Miss Tara, your virtual voice teacher. I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon. Love and high notes.